new poll is shedding light on what Maine voters are currently thinking about the primary elections next year.
The Pan Atlantic Research Omnibus poll surveyed more than 1,000 Mainers between November 29th and December 7th.
The winner of the U.S. Senate Democratic primary race would move on to challenge incumbent Senator Susan Collins. The poll shows Governor Janet Mills has a 47% support from those surveyed, while Graham Plattner had 37%.
If we dive in a little deeper, 56% of women say they will vote for Mills, with 37% saying they pick Plattner. Mills also has the majority of support by male voters, but by a smaller margin. When
it comes to age, a wide majority of 18 to 34-year-olds favor Plattner, 62% to 21% for Mills. Mills leads heavily with similar numbers for those 55 and older. In a potential general election matchup, the poll shows both Mills and Plattner in a statistical dead heat with Collins, with about 15% undecided. In the Democratic race for Maine governor, the poll surveyed more than 300 likely Democratic voters. Nirav Shah has a slight edge over Angus King III and Hannah Pingree. 24% of those surveyed said they would likely vote for Shah. King had 19%. Pingree received 18%.
Secretary of State Shenna Bellows had 16%, and former Senate President Troy Jackson got 8% support. As for the Republican primary, more than 300 likely Republican voters took part in the survey. Bobby Charles was in front with 16%, saying they would likely support him.
David Jones had 6% support. Jonathan Bush had 5%. James Libby received 3%, and Owen McCarthy had 2%. The Pan Atlantic poll has a margin of error of 3.7%.